On this episode of the Nationwide Real Estate Mastery Podcast, we sat down with Aileen Prak to uncover exactly how to passively invest in multifamily syndications. Welcome to the Nationwide Real Estate Mastery Podcast, where we provide actionable steps to help you get your first or next real estate deal. Now, during this episode, you're going to discover exactly how to passively invest in multifamily syndications. For those of you who are new to the show, my name is Shaun Young, today's host, and I love all things real estate. Now, before I introduce you to our incredible guest speaker today, I want to make a request that if at any point during the show you like what you're hearing, please give us a thumbs up or subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode. And make sure to take a look in the description of this episode, as we've packed it with thousands of dollars in free resources. Now, today, we have the privilege to learn from a woman with 2 children, working a full-time W-2 job, and is absolutely crushing it in real estate. Prior to her career in real estate, she was in the aerospace industry, which she's actually still is. But all that changed when she decided that she wanted more time freedom for herself and her family and went into real estate. I would describe our next guest as someone who educates others that there are more ways to create wealth, and one of the best ways to create wealth is through real estate. I'd like to introduce you all to the one, the only, Aileen Prak. Aileen, thanks for being a guest on today's show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Shaun.
Absolutely. We're super excited to hear all about multifamily syndications. But before we dive into that, can you give the listeners a little bit of background about yourself, where you come from, and how did you get started in real estate?
Absolutely. So my background comes from, I have a background in aerospace finance, and that's where I built up my career, worked the corporate job, continued. I got my education, went to school. My parents had instilled in us always from a young age, the best way to build up yourself is build up a strong foundation. And the way to do that is through education, because they came from they were immigrants into this country. And so they came here with, not a lot of education, no background or knowledge about the English language, and they were able to get to where they are today because they were able to educate themselves. They were able to build up. They took opportunities and have really, set a really great foundation for myself and for my sister as well. And so that has really set a root in me, and wanting to make sure in everything that I do, make sure that I had that strong foundation to start off with. And so that's how I got started. When I found out about real estate syndications, really got my education, started listening to a ton of podcasts, and then jumped right into investing in my first passive investment deal in a multifamily apartment syndication. And that was when the light bulb went off and we went full into it. Haven't looked back since. Have met amazing people along the way, and then also have a podcast of our own where we interview great other real estate experts in the field as well. And so that brings us to where we are today.
Absolutely. That is an amazing background, Aileen. That is amazing. So the fact that you are doing this full time, doing this full time with a full time W-2 is also amazing. I didn't want to breeze over that. You're a full time mother of 2, and you are making this happen. How are you able to juggle that? Can you share that with our audience as well? I'm sure that they would love to hear that.
It takes a lot of work, I will not lie, and it takes a lot of help as well from the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate enough where my business partner is also my husband. So we both focus on real estate together. So when one of us needs to lean more heavily on the other person, we're right there in it together. And so we're able to access each other 24/7. So one of the best partnerships that we could create, and really
Nice.
tag team it, and to be able to handle all the responsibilities or handle everything, raising our family, being together. because I have such a strong partner in my spouse. And then
Mhm.
also we have family close by who has also been a tremendous help as well as we've needed to, travel to see properties. We need to, spend some time here. They've always been able and willing to step in. And that has been huge in our journey so far.
That is huge and that is important. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's awesome to hear that you and your husband are actually partners in this business. You don't see that too often, but when you do, I love to see that because I know that it's something that's needed. Because if you're doing this, a lot of times your spouse or your significant other might not fully understand what you're doing or why you're doing it, or the hours that may be necessary or the sacrifices that may be necessary. So the fact that you guys are in it together, that's an awesome winning combination.
Thank
Well,
you. And, we met a lot of people also who are not working in spouses, but the main thing is to have just a spouse who's supportive, a partner
yes.
who's supportive of what you're doing. And I think that that makes all the difference.
100%. I let all of my students know from day one, the first conversation that they're going to have with their significant other is to let them know what they're going to be doing over the next few months. What is life going to look like? Prepare them so that you can get their buy-in on it. And you'll definitely have a better time at getting that support. So great point. Now, Eileen, let me ask you something here. Before we dive into passive investment in multifamily syndications, which I'm super interested to hear you share with our audience, you contribute a ton of your success to your mindset and the connections that you've made along the way. Why do you think this has played such a huge role in your current success?
Absolutely. Mindset has been one of the biggest factors when you're first starting throughout the journey and continuing on, to where we are today, because without the mindset, it's really difficult to get past your own individual saboteurs, things that are holding you back, your own limiting beliefs on what you can and cannot do. So, in order to condition your mind to think about and think bigger and further than what you allow yourself to typically think about, really helps to get you bigger and further faster and think bigger goals. Because when we first started, we had only invested prior, or we had only known about investing in our backyard in our home state,
Mm-hmm.
and we never heard about investing outside of, you know California, where I live, and let alone syndications, where we get to invest in these apartment buildings with other investors. Like, none of that was something that we were familiar with at all. But through meeting people and having those conversations and opening your mind to the possibilities out there, we realize that, the people who are investing in these apartment buildings are really people who are just like myself,
Mm-hmm.
just like my husband, just like normal people. And they're just looking to build up wealth for themselves, for their family. And it just clicked and it made sense. And if we allow ourselves to think that we can do this, that there is a bigger, brighter future, and by doing it together as a team, you can achieve those goals together, it really helps you go so much further, so much faster.
I love it. I love it. That makes a ton of sense. You got to have a team nowadays. You doing it all by yourself, being a lone wolf. Those days are over with. So I love the fact that you pointed out that you do have a team that assists you. You've got to have a team being a full-time W-2 employee. There's no way you could be doing this just by yourself or just with you and your husband. So that's a great point. Now let's go ahead and dive right into it. I'm super excited. I know our audience is ready to hear about it. Can you please peel back the layers before you go into one of your syndication deals? Like, you can tell us about your first one, whichever one you would like to tell us about. But before you do that, let's start with explaining to our audience what a multifamily syndication actually is.
A multifamily syndication, in its most simplest form, is really just a group investment. And so you think about, we can take one of the examples I like to use is a trip on an airplane. So you have the plane itself, you have a destination, you have the pilot, you have
Mhm.
passengers on the plane, and then you have also other members like the flight attendant crew. And those are all parts of the syndication, what we can call it. So in the syndication, you have someone who's piloting, flying the plane, who are typically the operators or the sponsors, and they have the most they have a very crucial role to make sure that you arrive to your destination safely.
Mhm.
And then you have your other team members in there who are also the flight attendant crew, who are making sure that things are going well. They're like your property managers, your lenders, other team members that are vital to making the syndication successful. And then you have your limited partners who are passive investors who you can consider as the passengers on the plane.
Mm.
They want to go to the same destination, but they don't have an active role in flying the plane. However, they've paid a ticket in order to get to that same destination. Everybody's going to the same place, but they just don't have an active role in that spot. And so you're broken up into limited partners, who are the passengers who pay for a seat on the plane, who invest their capital to be able to partake in the returns of the investment.
Mhm.
And then you have the general partners, who are the pilots who are flying the plane, the flight attendants who are actively managing, the needs and the making sure everything, the flight is smooth. And so that's the most simple way that was explained to me one time that I like to use going forward.
That, Eileen, I think is the best explanation I've ever heard. I promise you, that is the best explanation I've ever heard. And you wrapped it up in a bow. I mean, it was so precise that I love that. So I'll be sharing that moving forward as well. I like that. Love that analogy. All right. Now that we have an understanding of what a multifamily syndication is, can you walk us through, what it looks like? How do you find one of these deals? How do you put the players together? And how do you see this through to the finish line?
Right. So, you know, before understanding what a syndication was or even being introduced to the space, you're driving down the road and you never realize that regular people can own these multifamily apartment building units. And so it's just a group of people coming together and purchasing it and pooling their resources, their capital, their expertise to be able to do something like that. And so the main in order to find these types of investments, a lot of times you have to network because they're not really advertised heavily. There are certain regulations and specific investments that certain types of people are able to invest depending on if you are a high net worth income high net worth individual or high income earner, or if you're a sophisticated investor. So there's specific types of investments. So you're not really going to see these types being, broadcasted um, or blasted all over the internet because
Okay.
they just can't do that. So in order to be able to be involved or start building up a deal flow of these types of opportunities, you just got to start to network with people.
Okay.
The multifamily space is very small. So there's a lot of operators in the area. However, everybody is very familiar with each other. And so the more you start to talk to other people, the more you start to network, you'll start hearing the same names over and over again. And then you start, reaching out, getting on these lists. And so you're aware of when an opportunity comes around. And then that's when you can evaluate it. You can look at it, see if it meets your criteria, and then jump on the opportunity that matches and works the best for you.
That is awesome, and you're right. I've heard this before. I'm not in the syndication space, but I definitely have heard that it is a kind of like a small space, and that is interesting. I'm sure that we know a lot of the same folks. That's
Yes,
interesting,
I wouldn't be surprised if you do.
especially because some of the guys are out there in California. So absolutely, I'm sure that you've got to know a couple of these folks. So let me ask you this, Eileen. If now that you've basically explained that this is not the typical type of wholesale or real estate transaction, this is it's a more sophisticated approach. Do you have to come at it with a lot of capital, or is that something that one of the other passengers on the plane provides?
So, in order to get involved in syndication, there's many different ways that you can get involved into it. If, let's say, you just want to be a passive investor, you just want to be a passenger and enjoy the flight, you have the opportunity to invest your capital and then let the general partners, who are the pilots, operate the plane, run the plane, and get you to that destination, right?
Hmm.
So you can just do that. And there's a lot of people who are, working professionals. Maybe they're not interested in dealing with the residents or maintenance issues and all the things that entails of being a landlord. And they just really want to invest their capital that's maybe sitting in their savings account. There's ways to invest with your self-directed IRAs. So there's multiple different ways that you can do that if you don't want to be an active investor. On the other hand, if you do want to be more active, get more involved into it, you can also do that too, where, you can either find deals, bring it to other partners, partner with more experienced people. You can help raise capital, bring other investors onto the deals. You can help with the property management or the asset management of it. There's so many different roles that if you're resourceful and you understand your value add to the partnerships and what you can bring to the table, there's a lot of different ways to get involved. And it doesn't not necessarily mean that you have to, invest the capital into it, especially if you don't have any to begin with. There's other ways to get involved.
Okay. So can you walk us through your first syndication opportunity or multifamily syndication transaction that you participated with?
So the first one I did was as a passive investor myself. And that was, the very start of it, because for me, I always have to have a proof of concept first before I jump into anything straight on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to dive into as much of this as I could because nobody around me knew what syndications were. And so it's like, well, let's dive into this. Let's break it down, see what's all this about. So I started reading books, started listening to podcasts, educating myself as much as possible, trying to network as many people as I could to try to gain as much knowledge and get to a place where I felt comfortable enough that I understood the process, where I could invest my own capital first and then try it out, see if it was legitimate. Because when you first hear about it, you think, hey, is this real? Is this a scam? Am I really
Mm-hmm.
going to invest like $25,000, $50,000 to somebody that I've never met? Are they going to run away with my money? So it's a big mindset shift to thinking about investing this way. And so by educating yourself and getting yourself that knowledge to the point where you feel comfortable about it and you understand what could and could not happen, and you take a look at all your risks and the opportunities that go against it, and you feel comfortable, the only next step is to invest with a sponsor or someone that you feel like and trust. And so that's what I ended up doing. Was I found a sponsor who I connected well with. I had several phone conversations with them. They answered all of my questions, from start to finish. And I felt very comfortable, and I felt like they were trustworthy, and I felt like they understood their business plan, how to operate the properties. They had a good reputation in the industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gave me a lot of confidence to invest my first investment as a passive investor with them, because I needed a proof of concept first with an operator who was experienced in the space.
Got it. Man, this is great stuff, guys. As you know, the Nationwide Real Estate Mastery Podcast, it's a show that's unique because each show comes with a detailed, actionable step plan to help you guys get your first or next deal. That way, all you got to do is pull the steps out of the show notes, implement, and you're on your way. Now, Aileen, how can the folks out there reach you? Do you have a website or a way that people can connect with you to get more information on multifamily syndications or partner with you potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a passive investor due diligence checklist and video a free video series that we've put together to help people who are interested in learning more about the syndications and how to evaluate a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
So if they just go to our website at bonavestcapital.com/checklist, they can go ahead and just, drop in your email, and then we'll send you a bunch of videos and our checklist, and all of that's for free. And of course, you can just reach out to me directly if you want to talk or have any questions. I'm happy to be of a resource for anyone at Aileen Prak or Aileen at bonavestcapital.com.
Perfect. So we'll make sure that we leave a link of that in the description as well, guys, so you can make sure you can connect with her. Now, if at any point in the show, guys, if you like what you're hearing, make sure to hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. It's your engagement that drives us to keep doing this for the community for absolutely free. So, Aileen, we have reached the part of the show that I like to call the rapid fire session. Now, this is where I ask you a question and you just tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
All right.
All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strict were your parents?
Oh, I would say probably a 9.
Okay. Get up early or stay up late?
Stay up late.
How many hours of sleep do you get each night?
Probably between 5 to 6 hours.
Okay. Favorite?
Maybe a little more on the weekends though to catch up.
Indeed. Sounds like we're in the same boat. Favorite or last book read?
For real estate, one of my favorite books is a book by Joe Fairless, the apartment syndication, the best ever apartment syndication book, and that gives a great walkthrough about syndications and it's a great resource.
Awesome. If you could be any superhero, who would it be?
Does it have to be a mainstream one?
Nope. Anybody.
All right. So there used to be a TV show called Heroes.
I remember.
I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I used to
Okay.
love that
So
show.
there was this one character before it got weird, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning, there was this one character who he was able to, absorb other people's powers. And so as he would go through, not through their brain, but like as he would touch somebody on their arm or something like that, he could absorb all their different powers in a positive way. And he
Mm-hmm.
was trying to change the world that way. And I thought that was a really cool power to have. So if I could absorb like people's knowledge or things like that as quickly as possible, I think that would be a really cool power to have.
Indeed, indeed. And use it for good and not like the bad guy on the show, which was Siler, if
Yes.
I'm not mistaken. Indeed.
Yes.
I used to love that show. All right. Something that everyone should do less of.
I think something everyone should do less of is doubt yourself less, because the more you doubt yourself, you just hold yourself back from accomplishing bigger things. And you close a lot of opportunities when you doubt yourself. So give yourself a little bit, space for grace and believe in yourself a little bit more.
Nice. Something that everyone should do more of.
I think believe in yourself and overcome limiting your own personal limiting beliefs.
Okay. AI technology, scary or the way of the future?
Scary.
Aileen, if you had
It's a little scary about what it knows and doesn't know about you, and then the technology is yeah, it's interesting.
it is definitely interesting, especially where it is headed now. That's for sure. If you had one wish, Aileen, what would it be?
One wish, I think, to always be able to recognize and be grateful for what I currently have, and not always just hunting for the next best thing um and doing this whole comparison. So just, being grateful for where I am today and constantly being able to recognize that.
Awesome, awesome. I love it. I love it. If you had never found the multifamily syndication space and you were strictly, at your aerospace job, what would life look like? How do you think life would be?
Well, without the real estate syndications, I would have to be working because I needed to have that income coming into my banking account every single, 2 weeks or so or whatever like
Mm-hmm.
that, because I'm dependent on it.
Mm-hmm.
But with real estate syndications and having passive income coming through, I now have a second source of income, so that in case anything were to happen, I'm always protected. And so now I get to choose to stay at my working W-2 job because I want to, not because I have to at this point.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Aileen, what final thoughts did you want to share with our audience before we let you get out of here?
I would say if you are thinking about getting started in real estate, or if you're interested in learning more, you know, go ahead and just start taking those actions, those building up your education base, building up your knowledge, but then take those reasonable action items to get you to that next level, because we can always get into an analysis paralysis, and that could really hold us back from actually moving forward and taking those action steps to actually get us to that next step or to reach that journey that we want to get to.
Understood. That is amazing. I have enjoyed you so much. One more time, how can our audience reach you and get more information on what you do?
Sure. They can go ahead and visit our website, bonavestcapital.com/checklist.
Perfect. Aileen, I want to thank you so much for coming on today's show, sharing so much valuable information with our audience. Thank you once again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Shaun.
Absolutely. Anytime. And to our listeners, you guys have made it to the end of the show. So give yourselves a pat on the back, because most people never finish what they start, and you just did. Now, if you got any value out of today's show, please share it with a friend or on your Facebook page. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and send us topics that you want to learn more about. So until the next episode, you can catch me on any one of my social media platforms. I'll see you guys on the other side. Thanks, Aileen.
Thank you.
With this crown on my head, I'm seated on the throne. The top is so alone. Only thing that keeps me going is I know my city love me.